that great power connected with ambition, luxury, and flattery will as readily produce a Caesar, a Caligula, a Nero, and a Domitian in America, the same as it did in Rome.
You are listening to And If Love Remains, a unique show spotlighting people, ideas, science, culture, and art. Your host, Mike Lovett.
Hello, you are listening to that great podcast in the sky, And If Love Remains. This is your host, Mike Lovett, and I am here again on the road with my good friend, Joe Wolverton, Dr. Joe Wolverton, the doctor of liberty, the master of disaster, the king of sting. Hey, welcome to the show, Joe.
That's from my wrestling bio. I should have sent you the other one. That was from my wrestling. That's from my days with the NWO.
Hold on a second. Let me
get the other bio, man. That's my professional wrestling bio. One time, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in, I think it was Kansas City, and I was on tour with the 10th Amendment Center.
Yeah.
Me, Michael Bolden, Tom Woods, and Jack Hunter.
Okay.
And we were doing, it was the Nullify Now tour.
Oh, right on.
And we were in Kansas City. And this girl who's like the hostess, she comes into the green room and she's like, okay, I want to know how everybody wants to be, how you want to be introduced.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I don't, just my name is fine, man. I'm like, I don't really get into that. She's like, are you sure? Because everybody had something like Jack was the Southern Avenger. Now he stopped doing that because he started working for Rand Paul.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And some of his pro-Confederate stuff got Rand Paul in some hot water. So Jack stopped doing that. But he was like, okay, I'm the Southern Avenger. And Michael Bolden was like, whatever, founder and director of the 10th Amendment Center. Tom Woods was something. I don't remember what he called himself. And so she gets out there and she decides to freestyle what she called. And she's like, the candy that everybody wants.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And I got out there and I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, the candy that everybody wants.
All right, there we go. Joe Wolverton, the candy that everybody wants. The American terrorist himself.
That is, now that I have several names that I do enjoy. I do not enjoy being the candy everybody wants. But I do enjoy that they've called me an American terrorist and a neo-Confederate. Those,
there you go.
Those are titles that I cling to, that I proudly publicize that I am those things.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, my good terrorist friend. You know what? This is probably a good spot just for kicks and giggles. We just saw a movie, speaking of terrorism, we just saw a movie recently that was just so spot on, and I just can't get it out of my mind. It's kind of like maybe when you read Sydney, because that's how my mind, I go to this movie, you go to Sydney. It was so good. It was RRR, one of the greatest liberty movement movies I think that has ever been produced.
Yeah. So, I heard about this movie and we talked about it. This RRR is an Indian, from India, from the subcontinent, all about the Indian struggle to throw off British oppression. And I'm going to be honest, I was a bit hesitant,
right,
to think that, this sort of, because, Indian movies are typically a little over the top, dramatically, visually, cinematically.
And this didn't disappoint.
It was all of those things. However, the message, of rise up, roar, and riot really, really, really resonated with me, to use another R. The RRRR, right?
All right.
Just the whole, rise up, roar, and what was it? Revolt.
Revolt,
yeah,
or
right.
Yeah, I think it was
rise
Revolt.
Up, roar, revolt. That really resonated with me, and it was a fictional depiction of what would have happened if two of these real life Indian heroes had they met. And boy, I'm going to tell you, like, they that movie was incredible. It's on Netflix for those of you who want to watch it. It's literally called RRR.
Right.
And it's amazing. Like I came out of it's 3 hours and 7 minutes or something like that.
Of
And
pure awesome.
Yeah, I came out of the movie thinking I could go another hour. No, I mean, I probably could have. It was a really good movie. I started to get a little antsy at 3 hours. You're like, man, I've been sitting in this chair for 3 hours.
Right.
But the message was incredible.
It really was.
The message was there's millions of us and only thousands of them. And if we rise up, if we make noise, we can revolt. We can get this accomplished. And they bloody well did.
They did.
You know, India is a free country today because these people realize they can't kill us all.
Yep.
They will run out of bullets. You know, they can't kill us all, regardless of their superior firepower. This is our home. You know, this is our liberty. This is our property. These are our children. We can rise up. We can do, and they just trained many times secretly, always secretly.
Yeah.
Training to use weapons, which, I mean, this is the thing, okay, Mike? This thing I do not get about conservatives. Well, there's a lot I don't get. But this is one of the big things I don't get about conservatives.
Yeah, what's that?
And about libertarians, for that matter. They love the Second Amendment, but they only love the end of it. The Second Amendment, you read that, it is a statement of historically sound political truth that you cannot guarantee the freedom of a state without a well-regulated militia who is armed. But all the conservatives want to focus on, even the libertarians, all they want to focus on is this, well, we have the right to keep and bear arms. Yes, you do. You absolutely have the unadulterated, unalloyed right to keep and bear arms. But you also have, with that right, and the conservatives love to say, with rights come responsibilities. That's true. And with this right, the right to keep and bear arms, the responsibility is to be a well-regulated militia. But no one talks about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. How would you, I think definitions are important. I think the ability to separate, make known differences between words are important. So what would be the difference between a well-regulated militia and a standing army, or an army or a military?
Well, a military is a paid professional army composed of men whose job is to be a soldier, period. And our founding fathers, and this, I'm going to throw out a name. Guys, if you want to do yourselves a solid, and I try to always do this, if you want to do yourselves a solid, go Google the name, go to Online Library of Liberty. Just Google this phrase, Online Library of Liberty, St. George Tucker, and read his commentaries on the Constitution. He has an entire section about the difference between a militia and a standing army. And he says, if you see a standing army, your liberty is either dead or on life support. It's either dead or it's dying. Because why? Because that standing army, they no longer have a passion for liberty. They have an avowed allegiance. My father was in the army for 25 years. He had an avowed allegiance to obey his superiors. When you're in the militia, your superior is not some guy who answers to some guy who answers to some guy who ultimately answers to the president. When you're in the militia, you are, as Thomas Gordon said, you are standing there with your brothers, your uncles, your cousins, your father, and you're defending what is yours, and nobody fights as ferociously and faithfully as somebody fighting to keep what is his.
Right.
A standing army doesn't do that.
So a militia, when if you're a part of a militia, it's almost, or is, I want to say almost, it's a covenant that you've made with your neighbors saying, I will fight for your liberty if you fight for my liberty. I will fight for my property if you fight for your property. And we're not going to let an enemy agent take this away from us.
Right. And that presupposes several things that the founding fathers understood. You need to live in proximity to those who share your principles. I'm not going to be keen on protecting the life, liberty, and property of my neighbor if he's a stranger to me.
Right.
Even less so if I believe that he's not only is he a stranger, but he's someone whose politics disgust me, whose personal morality is far from my own. So you solve that, you make yourselves an impenetrable force for good by uniting together physically, geographically, with those with whom you share principles of good government, principles of morality, right? And then you are anxious because you know this person. Particularly, imagine if it's family. You don't want your uncle's farm to be taken. You don't want your cousin's life to be. You unite in, and it's what Livy said. Livy said, if you fight as a militia of men united as family, if you fight in this way, you represent a power that has shown the potential to defeat even the mighty Roman Empire.
And that's true. This is not like theory.
No.
This is fact. We were just talking off air about this exact principle in regards to the American Revolution. Going back to the movie, it centered around kind of one or two different villages. However, at the end of the movie, they were showing, photographs and depictions of person after person that represented different villages, different regions, different people that were all rising up simultaneously.
And they were praising those people,
That's
even
right.
though those people often didn't even speak the same dialogue.
Right.
Dialect. Didn't speak the same dialect. They were praising these people, saying this is the
different
guy who did it.
religions,
Different religions, yeah.
different political philosophies.
Right. But stood up and helped overthrow the British. And so, a militia basically is defined as any male. I mean, the founding fathers would define them as any male able to wield a weapon. And well-regulated meant that you train together. It doesn't mean regulations.
Right.
You have idiots that say that though, Mike.
Ooh.
I have people comment on well, you forgot the well-regulated means that the government's allowed to pass regulations.
No.
That's not what that means at all. What it means is you make something regular. You make it function regularly. In other words, you have a regimen. You regulate. You make it function properly. So in the day of the founding, I mean, you get someone like, why did they call James? Why do you see in letters James Madison called Colonel Madison? Because he was a colonel in his local Orange County militia, Orange County, Virginia, not California. So I was like, that guy just said that James Madison lived in Orange County. He's stupid. Turn that off. Orange County, Virginia. Which I'll tell you a funny story about Orange County.
Yeah.
So I went out there just by myself, single guy, to do a tour of the founding fathers' houses in Virginia. I'd always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And I go out there and I get to Orange County and I'm just making hotel reservations on the road. And there's one hotel room left in Orange County. And it's this suite that's like $250 a night. And I do it because I'm like, what else am I going to? And I was single and practicing law. I had, a couple of dollars. And so I did it, but it was it was so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Orange County. So Colonel Madison, because they would meet one weekend a month, maybe a couple of weeks during the summer, and they would get out in the village green and they'd be like, okay, what weapons do we got in the neighborhood? Okay.
Right.
Who knows let's all learn how to use them. Let's learn how to how to do formations. Let's learn how to fight.
Let's figure out our
In
signals.
case something ever happens, we're going to have rank. You're going to know who. We're going to divide you into squads and platoons. And in case anything ever happens, that any tyrannical government ever comes for us, we'll be ready for them. Well, you can't even say the word militia in Republican circles now without being marginalized and
Right.
ostracized. It's like, oh, don't talk about that. It's like the M word, right?
The M word.
It's the M word. Don't say militia, but our founding fathers, people gotta quit reading part of things. Read all of the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is absolute, but it is supposed to be the thing that enables us to have a militia, and it is a militia that's well regulated, that is necessary to the maintenance of a free state.
And here's the thing. You can or you can believe that, or you don't have to believe it. I mean, it's the truth. But what I'm saying is you can believe that as a sound political philosophy or not, but that really doesn't matter. Because as we were talking about this off air again, what matters is that the enemy class believes it. And the reason we know that is by watching what they do. And you just had an article in the New American recently talking about some of the steps that they're continuing. I mean, this is a continuous fight of making sure that we have our Second Amendment rights, that we maintain them at all costs. And it is a fight because the enemy class wants to take those away at every cost. So can you talk about your article and what you've discovered and what you were talking about?
Yeah, so I have a habit of checking in on the White House because they have a habit of adding cars to the long train of abuses and usurpations. And so I just regularly, meaning it is something I regularly do.
What, you weren't regulated?
No, there was no
it?
regulation. I just regularly. So I checked, and there was an executive order issued today that said, and it starts out so ironically. It's like, as according to my, authority vested in me by the Constitution, I hereby issue the following order. And in this order, Joe Biden does several things. So, they're going to lengthen the background check, right? They're going to lengthen the days for the background check. They're going to more aggressively enforce red flag laws, which is basically a way of saying all we have to do to take your gun, and even the Republicans will back us on this if we declare you crazy.
Right.
Well, how is someone crazy? Well, all I've got to do is look to see have you ever visited a therapist? Have you ever been prescribed anti-anxiety medicine? Because if you have, then you shouldn't own a gun.
Right.
So I'm asking all of you who are listening right now, if you think, ask not for whom the bell tolls, because it tolls for thee. Everybody, you go on Instagram, and I swear to heaven, everybody on there is, I have anxiety. I'm taking this. I'm taking that. I have anxiety. I'd shut up if I were you. Because these red flag laws basically instruct doctor. Because guess what? He lists the people that he says he needs to start. He's commanding. He's ordering. It's an executive order. He's ordering these people to more aggressively enforce red flag laws. Well, the Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Department of Health and Human Services. So doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the doctor, there's now going to be federal mandates that if you go to the doctor for anxiety, for depression, that doctor is going to have to inform the federal government that you do that. He's going to have to inform them that you've sought therapy. Your therapist will have to inform any prescription you get for anti-anxiety or depression or whatever. That will all be uploaded to the database.
And don't think that won't just be used against you in terms of your right to obtain a weapon. It will be used against you in every chance that they get.
Absolutely. But this is specific. I
Yes.
mean, in this executive order, and please go to whitehouse.gov, go to briefing room, or you can just go to my article at thenewamerican.com, and it's up there in the must reads. It's Biden executive
And I'll
order.
put it in the description so people
cool.
can just click on it.
Cool. So I have a link to the executive order, but in that he specifically says, we need to keep crazy people. No, he doesn't call them crazy. We need to keep dangerous people. And if you read the red flag laws in giant air quotes, if you read them, it basically, that's what it instructs. If you've ever sought treatment or medicine for depression or for anti-anxiety, then you're someone who really shouldn't have a gun for the safety of everyone around you. So, when you get on and you think it's something noble to talk about, I'd shut up about it if I were you.
And I also would say that is going to be expanded. It's not going to be a far-fetched thing to say that if you believe in quote a conspiracy theory, you're now a danger.
Don't think they're not gonna take and use a dragnet of social media posts.
Yeah.
This person said that if we don't have militias, that we won't be able to defeat the tyrant. That's so scary. Surely you don't want that person to have a gun.
Or how about this? This person says that the vaccine it shouldn't be given to children, and even though they were proven right at the time, it was against the what the government wanted us to believe. So therefore, they're antisocial.
I heard that this guy made a post saying that the January 6th thing was a joke.
Right.
That it should have been, that if we had a real January 6th, he'd be all behind it. That guy shouldn't own a weapon. Now, guys, this is not, us sitting here telling you what could happen. This happened today in an executive order. So we're going to expand the background check. We're going to more aggressively enforce red flag laws. He specifically included Health and Human Services, Veterans Affairs, and he also specifically ordered the Department of Education.
Right.
He said, I want the Department of Education, you guys need to be helping us out more by preaching the gospel of disarmament and how kids just aren't safe. There's no way we should have another school shooting. There's no way we should have any sort of serial killing. There's no way we should have another mass murder of someone with a gun. There's no way we should and the only way to stop that is to get rid of guns. And Department of Education, we need you guys to send out a curriculum that supports that position. And we need you to say, states, if you want this money, right, then you must adapt your curriculum to fit this new safety in the streets curriculum.
You're right. And to add on to that, you don't think that there's going to be mandatory reporting laws for there as well, where if a student, says they have a gun in the home, that's not going to be reported?
Oh, the teachers will be required to do that.
Right.
It's no different than if a teacher sees some, kid with a bruise and he's like, I've got to report potential, child abuse. If that teacher hears that kid say, well, my dad has guns and he says the government better not come for him. If the teacher hears that, to keep her job, she better be reporting to her higher ups that she heard that kind of talk. Next thing you know, there's a CPS visit to the home. Next thing you know, there's a Homeland Security visit to the home.
And this isn't.
And what's your choice? When the DHS is standing
Right.
there, these agents, what's your choice, Mike? Your choice is give up your weapons and stay home with your family, or or have your kids taken from you.
Right. That's
So what are you going to do?
Man, that's good. That's got a choice I think
You shoot the DHS agents?
Yeah,
Yes, that's
yeah.
what you do.
That's
What?
the right answer. Is you get that DHS agent out of your house any way possible, and you don't allow them in. And if that means
they don't get don't get in. And if you want to bring your buddies, I guess people always say that to me. Well, what happens if the states just refuse to cooperate and if the people just refuse? I don't know. Let's find out.
Right.
I don't know what will happen. Maybe we lose. Maybe we all end up in a gulag. But guess what? At least we had a go at it.
And let's remind people, like, our precious Constitution didn't protect us from this. Wasn't a constitutional amendment. This wasn't passed by Congress. This was a judge didn't say this. This was done by a monarch.
Yeah, exactly. If all means all lawmaking power in the federal government resides with Congress. All. In the list in Article 6 of the Supreme Law of the Land, it does not list executive orders. It does not list Supreme Court decisions. It says the Constitution and the laws made in pursuance of the Constitution. So even if Congress came out and said, you know what, it's a really good idea to keep dangerous people from owning weapons, so we're going to pass a federal red flag law. You can take that red flag law, roll it up real tight.
And shove it where the sun don't shine.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you got to realize that because there's guys that commented on this article already, Mike, who are like, but Congress has the power to pass laws, and if they pass laws, and the Supreme Court said that Congress has the power to restrict gun ownership, so your argument is wrong. And he really believes that. This is a guy who reads the bloody New American. You ask him, what party? Republican. I'm a law-abiding Republican. First of all, quit calling tyranny law.
Right.
It may be something, but it ain't law.
It's not law.
Okay? If I write you a prescription today for Xanax, you can't run down and, hey, my farmer, Joe gave it to me. Joe's not a pharmacist, right? But he wrote it on a prescription pad. So?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the authority to do that. So when they tell us this is a law, I'll be the judge of that.
Well, right. There are higher laws that supersede that law. We can start with the Constitution, but even then, let's say they passed a constitutional amendment that allowed Congress to pass such a law. Well, then there's a higher law, which is the law of God, which says that we get to protect our family, our property, and ourselves. If somehow that's superseded, there's the deepest law there is says nobody has the right to not allow somebody to protect themselves from tyranny of another, from stealing their property, their rights, and their family.
Well, John Locke went further.
Please tell me the further.
John Locke said that if the legislative body or any officer of the government, presidents, justice, whatever, makes a law rather than protecting the lives, liberty, and property of the people, attacks them, then though the Congress, the president, whoever it is, has declared war on the people.
That's right.
And the people are free to react accordingly, just as you would if war was declared. What do? You can fight back. And the government has declared war on us, Mike.
And this is where our friends, our good LDS friends who start citing things about, we believe in being subject to presidents, rulers, magistrates, and obeying, sustaining the law. Well, every single one of those people are outside the law. They are no longer those hold those positions. Right.
I was just trying to think what would be I have a podcast that I did, a video podcast that I did with Ben McClintock on that very subject, on being subject to the law and what that means. I should send you a link to that, and then you could include that. People could look at that because it's like an hour long about me just going off about why would we call just anything a congressman said? Why would you just call it law?
Right.
Why would you call anything a Supreme Court judge says law? That word has a meaning, and it isn't whatever somebody in a political office says.
And I think that's the point. Like, it's funny, we often go to that second half of that article of faith, of sustaining the law and what that means. But that first half, being subject to presidents, kings, magistrates, etc., is like that supposes that there is a law that they're upholding. In other words, in order to hold those positions, they need to be what? Protecting our liberties and our rights. And the second that they fall outside of that rung, amen to the priesthood of that man, and he's no longer holds that position, whether he has that title or not doesn't matter.
Right. Montesquieu had a thing where he said, look, these magistrates, as he's called, these politicians, they have limits on their power. And their power and the title of that power only exists insofar as they remain inside the limits granted by the people.
Right.
So if a congressman, if 500 congressmen violate the limits of their power and attack your property, then Montesquieu said that they're not congressmen, they're burglars.
That's right.
And you should treat them as you would treat a burglar. Right? A president who issues an executive order calling for the disarmament of the people, no president did that.
And any person dying fighting for their property, their rights, and their family should be hailed as a hero and a martyr.
Right. And that's one of the things about, I taught a lesson on the Battle of Bunker Hill, and it was like, something we're not taught today is that, yes, we need to be willing to fight for liberty, but we need to be willing to die for it as well. We don't see we don't see anyone willing to die. There are a few. There have been a few. Lavoy Finicum.
Yeah, for sure.
He was a martyr, and he will receive a reward for his support for the eternal concept of the liberty of the individual.
I think so many people don't, because we haven't, and we talked about this again, you mentioned it, about how we haven't lived under a state of liberty for so long. What are we can't even see what are the benefits of living in a free land? What are the benefits of not having the security of a police or of a governor that is our political father watching over us? What are the benefits of that kind of life?
Yeah, well, we don't know that, and so we're not willing to sacrifice for it.
Yeah,
because you say, how are you? If I die for liberty, how is that good? That's going to move the needle. Maybe it will.
Maybe it will.
If we finally see people willing to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Well, imagine if Sidney had that attitude.
Yeah. Imagine if Joseph Warren had that attitude.
Right.
If Nathan Hale had that attitude.
George Washington. But my point about Sidney specifically, and those that you talk about in your Founder's Recipe course and book, is that those martyrs, those people don't have the power of martyrdom to significantly influence those who won liberty. Does that make sense? In order to there has to be, in order to have the influence that a Sidney had on the founding fathers, it came at the cost of his blood. Right.
I mean, and he said that, right? And the founding fathers, right? This guy, would he have had the influence he had he on the scaffold said, you know what? Yeah, you guys are making a pretty sweet deal. I'm going to go home.
Right. Which they did. They made a pretty sweet deal.
They made a sweet deal to him, right? Just go home and shut up.
Right.
Okay. But he didn't. He's like, no, because if I do that, because what was his opening line? Truth is treason in the empire of lies, right? So telling the truth was treasonous. It is today. It's treasonous today, right? It's treasonous to say that there is no president, that there is no Congress, that it's treasonous. It's treasonous to say that every state has the absolute right to leave a union that has become tyrannical.
Right.
If the benefits of joining the union were supposed to be increased prosperity, increased liberty, but if it isn't, I'm out. If I join a club, and I'm joining a club with the idea that being in this club is going to provide me avenues for increased prosperity, but then I get in the club and I see that every day I'm poorer for being in the club, no one would say, well, you joined me.
Yeah.
You got to no, I'm leaving the club and I'm going to find a club that really does promote my prosperity.
Right. And you know, you made a comment on our last podcast that struck me. You asked the question, like, why, and it kind of goes back to what we're talking about here. Why would a farmer stand up, you know, and die? Like, why would he do that? Why would he stand with other farmers and literally knowing the chances of him coming back to his family are next to nil? Why would somebody do that? And I think, again, that goes back to understanding what are the benefits of liberty. And it's really hard to, you have to put on imaginary, you have to have a good imagination to think, like, what would it be like to truly live in a society where we looked out for one another, but we were free to live the life that we wish to live.
Yeah. You know, I think in one of my articles I mentioned, today, March 14th, is the birthday of the Abbe de Mobley. And this is a guy that's quoted 3 times in the Federalist Papers by Madison and Hamilton. No, and everybody likes to brag how they've read the Federalist Papers. No, you haven't. You haven't. You don't say you have, man. I mean, it's fine. Go on Facebook and put your little quote and talk about how we need to teach these kids to read the Federalist Papers. And I'm like, oh yeah, what does Federalist number 6 say?
Something.
Well, Trump. Okay, buddy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, you haven't read the Federalist Papers. Because I remember reading the Federalist Papers being like, who is the Abbe de Mobley? And I remember asking my professor, and he's like, I have no idea. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound good. And this was the days before the internet. So Joey had to, you know, go over to the library and be like,
uphill in the snow, both ways.
I was like, can I check out a book on the Abbe de Mobley? I have no idea what you're talking about. Then you come to find out that most of his stuff's not translated. It's like, whoa. But anyway, the bottom line is that he said, men do not often value that for which they did not pay a dear price. We drink out of wells we haven't dug. We eat the fruit of trees we haven't planted. We have no idea how much it cost our ancestors to plant those trees and dig those wells. And so when it comes to somebody saying, hey, we're going to tell you how much you can drink out of the well and how much fruit you're allowed to have, we're like, okay, because it didn't cost us anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're drinking freely anyway. If we drink 1 glass or 1,000, it's the same to us. It's like people that, you know, go to a grocery store for food. You're going to go to tomatoes. You can buy 1 tomato or you can buy 1,000. And it's the same to you because they're all right there at Kroger.
Right.
Right? But if you're a farmer, you know the work it takes to plant and cultivate and nourish and prune and grow. 1,000 tomatoes is a big deal to you.
Yeah.
It isn't to the person who has no idea about that. So when the government sits here and says, I'm going to restrict your access to the well and to the fruit of that tree, you're like, yeah, all right. Because you didn't do anything.
Right.
And so we don't value that for which we did not pay a dear price. So bringing it right back round, we need to start paying the price. We need to start having a generation of people, not my generation, because I'm too old and fat, but kids. We need to have that generation that Sidney called on, that hid and unregarded generation of kids that when they come of age, he says, bear testimony of liberty like as never was seen before. It's been done many times. The founding fathers were kids when they started. We just need that generation that says, no, you move.
And that price you talk about, it will be paid. It's either going to be paid by force or we're going to choose to pay it.
You know, that reminds me. You go ahead and vamp for a minute while I look up this quote.
Okay. And I say that because I think that today we're seeing a lot of things kind of come down the pipe. We're seeing inflation happen. We're seeing the cotton picking what do they call it? The product lines are being cut at every angle. Like things are falling apart. It's interesting. You'll go to a restaurant and half the things are not on the menu, even though they're on the menu. You'll go to, we're seeing banks fail. We're seeing all sorts of these things that have not been taken care of, or have been taken care of in the way that our enemy class wants to be taken care of. And so those things are falling apart. And whether we choose to pay that price is going to be paid. And so the question is, are we going to pay it in such a way that's going to promote and allow us to live more freely, or are we going to pay it in such a way, are we going to squander that opportunity and allow, the tyranny to become our saviors?
Are we going to trade our birthright for a mess of political pottage?
Amen. You said it better in one sentence.
That's all. That's all. No, that's what it comes down
right.
to. But I wanted to read to you this quotation. This is from the Anti-Federalist, Cato. Now, not Trenchard and Gordon Cato, because I know I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
This is not the Trenchard and Gordon Cato. This is the American. Trenchard and Gordon were British, writing in the 1720s. This is the American Anti-Federalist, meaning he opposed the ratification of the Constitution. This letter was published November 22nd, 1787. It's Cato number 5 for those of you scoring at home. And he goes and he talks about liberty and the value of it. And every year I share this quotation, and I want to share it with you guys. He says, "You are under a sacred obligation to provide for the safety of your posterity. And would you now desert their interests when by a small share of foresight you could have transmitted to them a beautiful political patrimony that would have prevented the necessity of their traveling through seas of blood to obtain that which your own wisdom might have secured." Amen and amen, worlds without end.
Amen. Yes.
You are under, says Cato, a sacred obligation to make sure liberty is handed down to your children, because just as you said, Mike, that price will be paid. We have shirked that obligation. There is no question. There's no debate. We have shirked that obligation. But there are children now not quite of age, and some of them that are of age and are kind of laying low, but they are the generation or two below us. And we do not want them having to wade through seas of blood to obtain that which we could have secured for them if we would have just used a little foresight.
Yep.
But we didn't. And so now they must travel through seas of blood to obtain that, as he calls it, that beautiful political patrimony, which means what? Which means you're handing down liberty.
Yeah.
So they will travel through seas. Let's not beat around the bush and be these pansy patriots. Listening to Tucker Carlson every night isn't going to get it done. Listening to Joe Rogan is not going to get it done. Maybe those things are good for your education. Maybe they're good for something. I don't know. But the fact is, the irrefutable, demonstrable fact of history is some generation, if we are to restore liberty to this people, there will be a generation now required to wade through seas of blood to do that. That's just period.
Yeah. And history bears that out every time.
Our fathers had to do it.
Yep.
George, read the accounts of the Battle of Lexington. Those British were so angry that these rednecks defeated them. They went back and slaughtered families to where some of these American Minutemen would come into their house and the blood of their families that had been slaughtered by the British was ankle deep. They came back to their home so proud that they had routed the British and sent them packing back to Boston. They get back to their home, to their little farm. They go in the house, wives dead, children all murdered by the British, blood up to their ankles.
You know, to kind of bring it back around for me, and I really don't want, I want people to watch this RRR movie so bad. And so I don't want to give anything away, but I want to mention this one thing. For me, one of the most moving scenes, and you talk about passing on the idea of liberty, is there's a scene where a father is teaching his son the responsibility of liberty in the most truthful way, in the most honest, with the full of integrity, where that liberty is secured and his family. There's one thing that is important, and that's to protect his family and protect the rights and push the British off their land at all costs. And it was bloody. And to me, that was the symbol of how, the question, how do we pass on liberty? Well, we should learn these things, and we need to, but what does that mean? That's got to take action. And the action is a father teaching a son how to drive tyrants away.
Maybe a well-regulated militia.
Maybe.
Of brothers and sons and cousins and uncles.
And a well-regulated militia would keep blood up to the ankles from happening, because nobody would dare.
No one would dare. And, you know, liberty, I think too many people view it as something political. Do you understand that individual liberty is the reason Jesus bled from every pore? To secure the blessings of liberty is the reason Jesus hung on a cross. To secure the blessings of individual liberty. It isn't political. It's personal. And that liberty as an eternal concept, as a valuable concept, was personified in the being of Jesus Christ of Nazareth and him crucified and the blood spilt in Gethsemane. So when you defend liberty, don't let people trap you in these political boxes, because it isn't a political issue. It's an eternal issue. It's a way for you to show. It's like Sidney even said, he's like, Christians should be better armed than anyone because they know better the value of liberty, because it cost the life of their God.
That's right.
And in his speech on the scaffold, he says, God, Father, I trust that I'm going to be okay because I'm just doing what your son taught me to do. Give my life for liberty. That seems to be a pretty good thing, right?
That really does. It seems like that is the truest thing. And if we can see ourselves as partakers of that, maybe
quit arguing politics.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah. This is a spiritual and personal battle.
I wanted to read near the end of this Cato, if you don't mind.
Please. Yeah.
So this is Cato 5. You can look it up. Cato V, the Roman numeral for 5. Read the whole thing. He's like, But he's like, some of you just are willing to discard your valuable rights. And he says, is it because you do not believe that an American could ever be a tyrant? If this is the case, you rest on a very weak basis. Americans are like other men in similar situations. When the manners, now listen to what he says. When the manners and opinions of the community are changed by the causes I mentioned before, and your political compact, meaning your constitution, is inexplicit, your posterity. So if you let your manners go, if you let your opinions be formed by people who aren't like you and don't have your best interest in mind, and then if you let people rest, W-R-E-S-T, the terms of your constitution, so he's saying, if you guys do all this, your posterity will find that great power connected with ambition, luxury, and flattery will as readily produce a Caesar, a Caligula, a Nero, and a Domitian in America, the same as it did in Rome.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah, and we can name those people.
It's kind of time to name names, isn't it?
I think so. Well, yeah, I mean those presidents from Lincoln on, every single one, and we can make a case even beforehand, but I think Lincoln is a great dividing mark, mostly because he's so revered. But that is a great. They've all built on that new, Pax Romana, American. Let's conquer the world and we're going to rule everybody and they're going to be under our feet mentality. I think, and that is just like what Cato says, that is the natural order. That's not unique. It's like fighting entropy. We have to fight against that at all times. We have to be hyper vigilant about that. And we have not been vigilant in 150 years.
But we also haven't been taught those things because we allowed the government to act in loco parentis because it made our life easy.
Right.
Because we wanted, we had ambition, we wanted luxury. So we wanted those things, and so we've allowed there to be a Caesar, a Caligula, a Nero.
And we've lost la dolce vita. We've lost the sweet life.
Precisely. There was, go ahead and vamp again. I wanted to read this, one of these things that I read from Hugo Grotius that always gets people so upset, and I love doing it for that purpose.
Right on. Well, I think mentioning Cato, and the Anti-Federalists, I think that's for as many people who have actually read the Federalist Papers, maybe 1% of those people have read the Anti-Federalists.
Oh, crikey.
Can
you...
And here's the thing, like when you read just a few of those things, you start to realize, wait a sec,
oops,
they were right on every point.
Just all you have to do, look, if you want to just dip your toe in, read Patrick Henry's speech.
I was going to say, who are some of can you name like 2 or 3 famous people that we would consider he was an anti-federalist? I think people would be shocked.
Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, George Mason. I mean, these are famous ones, but I would tell you most of these guys wrote under pen names.
Yeah.
And they weren't, they weren't organized, right? Like the Federalist Papers. They didn't have some guy saying, let's have our 3 best guys go at this. And
right.
They didn't do that. But I would read, gosh, you can order from Amazon for $7.99 the Anti-Federalist Papers. Just do that.
Yeah.
You're going to get the Patrick Henry speech in that book. It's from, I think it's Signet Books. It's literally like 7. You could go over if you're
I'll put
in
a
a
link in
town-
the description.
if you're a town with Barnes and Noble, you can run over there tomorrow.
Yep.
You can go to a used book. Don't even go to Barnes and Noble. Go to a used bookstore.
There you go.
Support a local merchant. Go to a used bookstore. Look for the anti-federal. I bet it costs $2 at most. Grab that. Read it cover to cover, and then get back to me, because you're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't we see this?" Because we're not taught that. Because why would the tyrant teach you? Why would the tyrant give you the tools to tear him down?
He wouldn't just,
He wouldn't.
It just
He would issue an executive order saying, we need a curriculum that teaches disarmament.
Yep.
Which is what he did today.
Which is what he did today.
I wanted to read this because this people gets when Cato in number 5 is talking about your manners are gone, your custom is good. You follow a bunch of ambitious, avaricious, luxury loving people. You follow them, and now you wonder why there's a Caesar in charge. Well, this quotation from Hugo Grotius, I love it so much. He knows not how to rule a kingdom that cannot rule a province. He cannot rule a province if he cannot rule a city. He cannot rule a city that knows not how to rule a village. He cannot rule a village that cannot rule a family. Nor can that man govern well a family if he knows not how to govern himself. Who's Hugo Grotius? There's a reason these guys aren't taught, man.
Right.
And there you go.
And just look at the families of our politicians and ask yourself, are these people worthy of ruling their family, let alone a village, a state, a country? And the answer in 100% of the cases, I think, is no.
No.
And it starts right there. They can't rule themselves. And why? One reason is what you've mentioned. We've been educated how not to rule ourselves. We've been educated how to be ruled.
Oh, yeah, how to be good citizens.
Yeah.
I mean, you read going back to this, read the Proclamation of Rebellion of 1775, King George's Proclamation of Rebellion, just go look it up. Just Google it. The Proclamation of Rebellion of 1775. He explains in there, be a good citizen. Well, he says subject, but
Right.
Be a good citizen. Protect your country. Don't you love your country? If you love your country, you're going to turn in all these conspiracies. He literally used the word.
You're going to have a mandatory reporting for all British citizens, British subjects.
Right. I mean, but he couches it. It's such good propaganda.
Yeah.
He couches it in such terms of, don't you love the liberty you enjoy as a subject of His Majesty? Don't you love there's no one free like the English are free. These people, these are wicked. He uses the word wicked and ill-designing men. They don't have your best interest. They are all profiting from their rebellion.
That just speaks of 2023. I mean, that is just right out of the tyrant's handbook, which he was, and we're seeing today. Man, it's, as so many have said before, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
I always like telling my students, because my students are like, oh, history repeats itself. No, history is inert. History is just words on a page.
Yeah.
Human beings have agency, and we keep doing the same stupid things. We fall into the same, as like speaking of Trenchard and Gordon, there must be a vast fund of stupidity.
Well, when you have a place, I mean, government is such what is government? Is taking all of our fears, all of our insecurities, all of our mental illness, all of our sin, and literally packing it, distilling it, and putting it into this monster that we call government, and then expecting the government to protect us from those very same things. It is, and you can say, well, that sounds hyperbolic, but it's not. That is exactly what government is and what it does. It like what is government supposed to protect us from? From poverty, like from violence. Like government is
protect yourself from violence, protect yourself from poverty.
But that's my point. Government is the source of poverty and violence.
Oh, absolutely.
And, why do we go to the devil and say, hey, can you save us from our sins? He'll say, no, but I can give you some porridge.
Again, right back to the Bible.
Yeah.
Give me thine honor, said Lucifer. I will save all. I will keep them all safe.
Right.
I will guarantee they do good things. I will bring them all back. Not one soul will be lost. Just let me do it. Give me the honor. And Jesus says, yeah, we're going to lose some. We're going to lose a lot, but they're going to be free. And the ones who get back here, they really want to be here because they use their agency for good. And I'm going to make sure they maintain that ability to repent of their wrongdoings by bleeding from every pore and hanging on a cross. I'm going to keep my mouth shut at these illegal trials because if I spoke, that gives them some sort of legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to stand here and take it and be a martyr. And he is the capital M martyr,
right, for
liberty. I wanted to read this. This is from Emmer de Vattel, a guy nobody knows. But man, this is one of these quotations that I had a female teacher get so mad that I put this on the board. A feminist, you know the type.
Yep.
This is Emmer de Vattel writing in his seminal book, The Law of Nations, which Benjamin Franklin said every congressman had a copy of it in the Continental Congress because it's the law of nations, and they were putting together a
nation.
They had several nations coming together to make law for their union.
I always have to keep, because I swimming in the wrong streams for so long. Keep reminding me, Joey, it was several nations. It wasn't one.
That's right. So he says, listen to de Vattel. People are going to die. Here then, now he uses, you might have to Google some stuff. I'm just going to read what he says, but I'll slow down. Here then is an infallible criterion by which a nation may judge of the intentions of those who govern it. All right, so he's like, I'm going to give you the key, a key that never fails to reveal the intentions of your politicians. He says, if they endeavor to render the great and common people virtuous, their views are pure and upright, you may rest assured that they solely aim at the great purpose of government, the happiness and glory of the nation. That's cool.
Yeah.
Starting off positive,
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
there's always a big but.
Nevertheless, if they corrupt the morals of the people, spread a taste for luxury, encourage effeminacy, encourage a rage for sexual pleasure, if they stimulate the wealthy to ruinous pomp and extravagance, beware, citizens, beware of those corrupters. They only aim at purchasing slaves in order to exercise over them their arbitrary power. Now, do you see, these guys are never going to be taught.
Gosh, that is so good.
Bloody well mentions effeminacy. If he encourages, hey man, toxic masculinity needs to be dealt with. Encourages effeminacy, and it just means men acting effeminate.
Yes.
Surely you're paying attention.
Right.
That even your more conservative, they're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
But he did.
Yeah.
He went right to the heart of it.
He's like, beware, citizens. If they're doing this stuff, they just want to make you slaves.
Wow.
Notice how none of this sounded particularly political. It all sounded cultural, no?
Yes.
If they corrupt the morals of the people, dude, if you embrace morality, you get canceled and mocked.
Right.
if they spread a taste for luxury, you got to buy some stuff, man. You got to have this. You got to have that. You got to have these things. If they encourage effeminacy.
Oh, I just saw just today, there was a girls basketball team that from a Christian school that refused to play another school because the school had a male on their team pretending to be a female to play basketball again. And this girls team from the Christian school said, we're not going to play them. Not only did they forfeit the game, but they were exercised out of any they cannot play in any competitive event in that.
Well, he who looks on the heart will reward them openly.
Amen.
And I mean, encourages a rage for sexual pleasure.
Like, it's funny, we think of people who lived before, I don't know, the 1980s, 1960s as being prudish and being like not understanding sexuality and not understanding, when the truth is they understand it far better than we do.
Oh my gosh. And when I had that on the board, that female teacher's like, you're teaching them that to be feminine is bad. I said, no,
that's
effeminacy is when a man behaves effeminately. Femininity is a good thing. As the Romans said, when the hearth dies, the republic died long before it.
Yep.
So be a femininity, motherhood, womanhood is exalted above most all other things. But you can't do that if you're having fake women run around debasing the value of true womanhood.
That's right.
And, I mean, if I'm going to go around the neighborhood and I'm going to hand everybody fake $100 bills and the merchants in town are going to take those fake hundreds, guess what just happened to your real hundreds, Slick?
They became
worthless.
Yep.
So men walking around forcing people to treat them like women, I don't care. Dude, if you're that deranged, knock yourself out. But officialdom forcing you to recognize those things. And in certain charter schools devoted to the founding fathers, putting in separate bathrooms,
right,
gender neutral bathrooms for the trannies. Dude.
Well, and all of this stuff so reminds me of The Last Battle in the C.S. Lewis great novel, and the fake Aslans.
Oh yeah.
And they were all just dress up, and it reminds me of that. It's like having the, it's not even the appearance. It like these so many of these popular transgendered people are literally nothing but what's the word I'm looking for? They're symbols of the worst in women. Like they're ditzy. They are they're not smart. They're not athletic. They're putting off this idea like this is what a woman should be, and it's these men that are doing it. It drives me crazy. It's like you're playing, and you're playing. It's like you're playing blackface with women.
It's not like, it is exactly that. You're doing blackface, but instead you're doing feminine face.
Right.
And nobody says anything. Now, if you do blackface, you're canceled. If you say, hey, I know I was born a boy, but I'm a girl, everybody's like, oh my gosh, what's your name? What name did you choose?
Right.
And deranged.
And again, like you said,
psychologically unwell.
If somebody is an adult and they want to live the lifestyle,
dude,
go for it.
And if you want to live in a polity, in a political system where that kind of stuff is encouraged and paid for by other people, and you want to tax other people to pay for their surgeries, knock yourself out.
Just do it on your own dime.
Let you and your fellow deranged socialists form your. I'd love it. I would support your right to do it.
Absolutely. 100%.
I would make trade treaties with you, perhaps. Yeah. I would never attack you. I would never come for your property. If the weirdos made stuff that I needed, I might even trade. I don't know. But the point is, I sure wouldn't attack you or your property. If you guys want to join together with like-minded people, that's the goal. But join with like-minded people, make laws that conform to your ideas of good government and good morality, knock yourself out.
And prove him wrong. But
we're saying... Prove Emmer DeVotto wrong, that effeminacy and sexual immorality, they don't actually end up in slavery. Prove us wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, isn't that the goal?
Yes, it is.
Secession is such a simple and beautiful thing because that gives us all a chance to be these little laboratories of what's right and what's wrong. And guess what? Just like in science, we're going to put it to the test. If your way is better, guess what? We're all going to see that. Yep. Now, there may be people prideful and they're like, I don't care. I'm going to do it my way. I don't care. That's fine. That's cool. Be poor and stupid. Who cares?
Right.
That's your right to be poor and stupid.
Absolutely.
But if I see it works, I'm like, hey, you know what? It works. But have the intellectual wherewithal, the intellectual honesty, if our way works, to admit that.
Right.
Say, you know what? Man, a free market with sexual morality, with close families, with a well-regulated militia, with laws made according to certain very limited powers. All of that really, y'all seem to have it dialed in. Let one state do that, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if one state governor could stand on the steps of the state house, and inshallah, it would be Tennessee. If he could stand there and say, take the check, metaphorically, from the federal government and rip it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had a majority of those state legislators with the Stugats,
mm-hmm.
the Stugats to stand up and defend their sovereignty, which was never ceded to the federal government. And if they said, as of today, we are going to enforce the limits of the Constitution. We are doing away with income. There is no state income tax in Tennessee. No one that lives in the sovereign Republic of Tennessee will pay federal income tax. You will not have any federal taxation. You will not be required to adhere to any federal act that violates that.
There's going to be a big sign that says G-men not welcome.
Well, guess what? The population of Tennessee triples overnight.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, then what will Mississippi, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky? You know, Tennessee's surrounded by the most number of states of any state in the union.
I didn't know that.
7.
Wow.
Yeah, we'd have quite a fight on our hands if those 7 wanted to come for us. But anyway.
But you're right. That's not
Kentucky
what would
would be like, oh my gosh, I want that kind of prosperity. Hey, we're doing it over here too, guys.
Yep.
That lifts. Liberty is the tide that lifts all boats. From canoes to yachts, baby. We're all better off if we're free.
And that's why every single federal politician, I'm thinking right now to make sure what I'm saying is going to be true, and it's going to be true to the best of my ability. Every single federal politician is doing the devil's work, because no matter how much you love freedom, no matter how much you believe in liberty, the fact that you are supporting a federal government by just being there, by just working there and saying, my vote matters, my one of 500 votes matters, just you being there to prop up this ghastly monster,
tyrannical, broken Leviathan.
That's right. Is doing the devil's work, and you lose your liberty credentials.
Period. Come home.
Yep.
Join your state legislature. Join with like-minded legislators in your state to block at the sovereign borders of your state every unconstitutional act of the federal government. And I would guarantee you the prosperity, the happiness of your people geometrically improves.
Yep.
Because what did Devaudel say? Beware, citizens. Beware of those corruptors. They aim to purchase slaves. They just want you weak. They want you weak financially, economically. I want everybody who's listening to this, think about how you think about your own family dynamic. If you send your kids to public school or charter school or private school, if you send your kids away to school, let's say Monday through Thursday for those schools that, have adopted that schedule.
Right.
I want you to ask yourself how many hours a day you spend with your children. I want you to ask yourself, do you know the qualifications, the religious and political opinions of those people to whom you've given authority over your children? Do you know what religion their teachers are? Do you know what political persuasion? Do you know anything about? Do you know what college they went to? Do you know anything about them? And then think of the dynamic. They want you economically weak. They want your families weak. And you're like, well, our family's strong. We go to church 2 hours a week. Right. And your kids spend about 40 hours a week in an indoctrination camp. And if you don't think they're indoctrination camp, read the executive order that was issued today.
That's right.
Think of your own family dynamic, how they are weakening. Your kids come home, you might spend half an hour in their presence where everybody's in their room, everybody's on their device, everybody's doing whatever they're doing. Bedtime comes, maybe you kiss them goodnight, maybe you say goodnight. In the morning, everybody, mom included, because you gotta have those vacations, man. You gotta have those extra cars. Everybody's out of the house in a rush, which makes everybody grumpy. Everybody's out of the house in a rush. You come back and wash, rinse, repeat for the next 18 years. And then, why are our families disintegrating? It must be the Democrats' fault. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. You are the reason. I wrote a whole article about this. People get so mad at the Democrats and the progressives for destroying the family. You're the ones who send your kids to strangers to be educated when we know they're actually, in Latin, being seduced. To strangers for 40 hours a week, 36 weeks a year, 13 years of their life. And you spend how much, answer yourselves honestly, how much time do you spend with your children when they come home? And how much time do you spend apart? They are weakening you so that they might control you. Right? How many, you just don't want to put up the fight? Yeah, I just want them. Yes, they're just quieter. They're just better behaved. I just let them go to their room with their phone.
And when things like this executive order happen and stronger executive orders happen, which will happen, what fealty will your kids have towards you?
Oh, they will have been taught that it's their duty, their obligation to obey the law. And what's the law? Look at, I challenge you. Take your child's American history or government textbook. If that child, take the U.S. history and government textbook, find the definition of law that's given there. Find it and see if you agree. Most of you probably will because you've been taught from the same books. Find the definition of law. The federal government makes laws for the United States. And once the federal government has issued a law, The supremacy clause of the Constitution says that the state laws are surpassed and superseded by the federal law because the federal law is supreme. Do you know what all of that is? Lies.
Lies.
But guess what you do about it? Nothing.
And here's the thing I really appreciate, Joey, is I believe that too. And it was you who has literally taught me more about the Constitution and how to think about more than just like what's in the Constitution. That's one thing, but how to think properly about what the Constitution is and how it relates to me, or in most cases doesn't relate to me. Like what I think that, and I just want to say that, like, I appreciate, and I think people who are listening to this show, know kind of the gravitas, the thing, you speak from authority, because you've done so much research, you've done so much work in these areas. But I just want to just, again, reemphasize, your books, the things you've written, the things you've done, the things you've taught me have been invaluable in my political awakening. Let's say it that way.
Well, thank you. I went through this similar awakening, of course, and my Quaker ancestors do not appreciate all those things you just said about me. It's never about you. It's always about someone else, right? Always.
Well, here's the thing. The things you're teaching
I just stand on the shoulders of great men.
Yeah.
I'm not an architect. I'm a tour guide.
But you're a good one.
Yeah, I have a cool double-decker bus.
There's nothing wrong with being a great tour guide.
I wanted to read to you this from Cato, not the Anti-Federalist Cato, but Trenchard and Gordon Cato. This is from one of their letters, letter number 69. This is what you realize, our founding fathers, that Cato's letters were called the dress rehearsal for revolution. These letters were reprinted in every newspaper from Savannah to Maine.
Wow.
Every one.
That's insane.
If you go to an American history professor at your local university and ask him to tell you of the influence of John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon, they will have no idea who those men are. And guess what? If it wasn't for John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon, we would still be in the English Empire. Period. Here's what they said in one of their letters. Now, therefore, my best friends, it's time to help yourselves. Now, act honestly and boldly for liberty, or forget forever the glorious and charming sound.
You are listening to And If Love Remains.
The first of 23 installments requested by Dr. Levitt. We're trying to be in compliance here because we're taking him and that whole organization down.